Hi, I'm Lee Baker, and welcome to this week's episode of Level Up with Lee. Today's guest is an expert in the area of education planning. You know, getting children into college and paying for it is always a high priority for many of our viewers. So let's welcome today's guest, Peg Keough, Director of Education for College Age Pro. Peg, welcome to our show, and if you would, tell the audience a little bit about yourself.
Sure, sure. Yeah, happy to be here. Thanks for having me. So I have a background in the financial industry, used to be a financial planner, and I have twins. So when my kids hit high school, I did what a lot of you listeners have probably done or are about to do, kind of did a deep dive into all things high school. I had been saving for college, but now it was time to figure out how this whole thing works since it'd been a long time since I had gone through it as a kid, and I was just shocked at how much more complicated it was. And the other thing I noticed was a lot of my friends and colleagues were not really doing a deep dive. It was overwhelming, and they were doing what I call touristing through the process. And it was creating expense, and it was creating stress within the family. And I kind of had this aha moment that, you know what? I could take all my knowledge, my financial planning, all this time that I'd worked with parents as clients, and really focus on what I call this late stage college planning. Once college bound kids are in high school, all the planning around it. So that's what I did. I started my own business over a decade ago. And then a little bit over 2 years ago, I joined College J Pro, was really looking for a team, was, kind of lonely out there on my own. And so I joined them, doing the same sort of work with families, but, just having people to bounce ideas off and having a team. So I think my best credential is that I've been through this, times two
Gotcha.
with my kids.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's significant. You know, it's one thing to, be somebody that's talking from an ivory tower, so to speak, about what should happen and what could happen. It's a different kettle of fish to have gone through that process. So, absolutely, being a parent of two myself who are in the midst of the process. We've got one in graduate school and one undergrad. I totally get it. So.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, it's interesting. So last year, it's 2024 now as we sit here and speak, but last year brought some significant changes in the world of college planning. Perhaps one of the biggest changes was to the new FAFSA process. That dreaded process that many parents and children have grown to love and hate. Tell us a little bit about those changes and how those changes affected families.
Yeah, so what the Federal Student Aid Department of Ed did is they did a complete revamp of the FAFSA. And for people that doesn't mean anything to you, it's the free application for federal student aid. It's basically the form that almost every school in the country requires to figure out how much you can afford for a year of school so they can give you a package. Most schools only require that, some require another form with the FAFSA. So everybody's got to submit the FAFSA. So they did a complete overhaul. And unfortunately, the tech behind it, and I am not a tech person, so I am not going to be able to speak to that at all. Um,
Okay.
there's just been a lot of glitches. And so a process that you kind of hinted to that's stressful for families just ramped up to another level because first of all, the form goes live October 1 every year,
Right.
and it was postponed to going live sometime in December, which ended up being right at the end of December. And then when it did go live, as I said, there are a lot of glitches. People can't get into it, and I think it was especially hard for parents. Sounds like you who were used to the old way, and then all of a sudden there's a new way, and they called it the simpler FAFSA, but I think if you polled most people, they wouldn't say that it actually was simpler. So just
Not so
some
much.
just some major changes in how you go into it, and people there's this it's always been the students FAFSA. It's their form,
Right.
but parents are contributing, and so they created this thing called contributors, and they're actually filling it out and logging in separately and then signing, and that becomes a part of the student FAFSA, which in a little cumbersome, but it didn't it doesn't work all the times either, which created more stress. So at a high level, that's what's going on. And they delayed sending, it's called, the technical term is ICERs, but it's basically the family's information to the colleges to make you get to work creating a financial aid award package. That got delayed to first they said end of January, and now they're in the midst of doing it, but it's not done. So this delays the whole process for families to be able to appeal, to be accepted and understand what it might cost them and should they be appealing. So it just is something that tends to be pretty stressful for families and just add in a whole another level of stress this year.
Gotcha. So, do you have any hopeful words of when this thing might get straightened out or corrected? Any best guess on when things may normalize?
Yeah, I mean, they are sending the information now to the colleges. I'm hoping they're done with that in the next week or two. They haven't said they will be, but they've
Okay.
started the process. The main thing, my talk track through this whole thing with families has been, take a deep breath. Everybody's in the same boat and there's really not much you can do except get that FAFSA in. So, when you submit the FAFSA, that was a key action item here. When you submit the FAFSA, your student will get an email. So if your kids aren't great with email, I know my kids are older and email is kind of a dinosaur to them, but
Right.
you gotta be all over their email through this process. They should get an email right away. And the key thing is there's a submission date. There's a DRN number, which is, don't worry about that. It's an internal thing. And then there might be what's called an SAI on there, a student aid index. And even if there isn't, the key thing is that submission date. Get the
Gotcha.
FAFSA submitted, make sure your child forwards that email, then you got your proof you submitted it. Even if there were glitches and it doesn't appear to be complete, at least the college, if they have a deadline to get it in, which most of them do, you've met the deadline, and it's going to be a work in progress. For them to get award packages, they might have to reach out to families.
Gotcha. Gotcha. So, should families, if they are kind of stuck in the middle of this, should they reach out to the federal student aid folks? Should they reach out to the college, or do they simply just wait? What kind of recommendations do you have?
Yeah. Try and move through so that you can submit. Because as you've been typical family, a parent as a contributor, and the student. So you go through the student part, hit submit, sign it, go through the parent part, and that becomes part of the student part. That try and get through that whole thing. And as I said, get that email. If you never got the email, I would be reaching out to the colleges and just saying, hey, FYI, you're on the list because the student lists all the colleges on their part of the FAFSA that they want it to be sent to. We never got we never got the email. Well, how is this going to work with you? We want to make sure you get this information. We want to make sure we're not penalized. That's what I would do. And it might be a little laborious if you have 9, 10 schools on your child's list. I would just document who I talked to. If you
Yeah.
call FAFSA, you can. It's just, it's not super helpful. I
Okay.
mean, it makes you sleep at night to call them, and you might be on hold for a while too.
Good.
So
Got it.
you're not going to get some definitive answer through this whole process with all the tech glitches. But they would just say, yes, we're aware of that glitch
Got
and
it.
we're working on it, that sort of thing.
Okay. Okay. Cool. Now to kind of switch gears a little bit, you mentioned that you had twins and you've been saving for college for them. But now, having gone through that process and having worked with numerous families all across the country, when would you say is the best time for parents to really get serious about planning for college for their children?
Yeah, on the financial aid side, in an ideal world, you're thinking about this by the middle of sophomore year in high school. And the reason why is that's the beginning of the tax year that they're going to be asking you about when you pull up that form, if you do on October 1, when it goes live your child's senior year.
And unfortunately, most parents, that's the last thing on their mind. They're probably thinking about essay, should you take some
Right.
practice SAT, ACT? They're thinking of the admission stuff. What are you taking in high school? All those are valid things on the admission side. But for
Sure.
financial aid, that's when I love to first meet families or educate them, because you don't want to do things that you can avoid, like create capital gains or take a distribution out of your 401k. Like if you get a promotion, of course, you're going to welcome that with open arms. Your income goes up.
Absolutely.
That's a good thing across the board, right?
Right.
But
Right.
other things, I see families all the time, and I'm like, now you got to reach out to the college and explain why you have all this income that's really not your income. So that's why I like people to be informed, because they can plan. There's certain kind of accounts that kids can have that can hurt you in financial aid, but there's strategies to move that. But when you move it in a tax year that matters, it shows up on a tax return. So that's ideally when I love for families to start in reality. It's
Hmm.
usually junior year, and then sometimes, honestly, it's right before senior year, because I think it's not like retirement. Parents realize, uh-oh, I can't put
Right.
this off any longer. And I get it. It's
Yep.
overwhelming, right? And so people put it off, but then once their kids are seniors, it's pretty hard to procrastinate any longer.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, we got a question in from one of our viewers. It's from Christine out in Colorado. And Christine wants to know, with some kids beginning to choose things like trade school or take other paths, is it better to put money into a college savings account or perhaps do something else? What do you think that?
Yeah, I mean, you want to think about the advantages first. You know your child. So if you have an inkling that your child's either not going to go to college or go to an institution that doesn't fall in that bucket that you can pull money out of a 529, it has to be, an institution that that is part of that group, and you have to use it for qualified education expenses that are defined by the IRS. So if you have an inkling that your child might not, might fall in a bucket where you can't use a 529. That's something to keep in mind. But also keep in mind that you can change the beneficiary out of 529. So if you have 3 children, this is your oldest, depending on your family, you might say odds are one of these kids, or 3 of them, or 2 of them are going to end up in college. So say the
Right.
first one goes another route, you can always change the beneficiary, because, the big advantage of 529s is its tax-free growth. And when you pull it out for those qualified education expenses, you never pay tax on those earnings, which is it's a really nice perk. And then in certain states, you actually have a state tax deduction too. So
Right.
that you get a break on your taxes at the state level. So there's some positives. The negatives are, if you have an only child really doesn't go to school, you can change the beneficiary to designated other family members as well. Um, but you're not going back to school, you don't have a niece or nephew you want to do, yeah, you could get stuck there where you're going to have to pay tax on the earnings and penalty. But for people that know, it's a good place. It's a good place to save. You can also just earmark it. You just don't get the tax-free growth
Right.
advantages.
Right.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Okay. Cool. Now, let me pivot back for a second to a scenario that you touched on, and that's a lot of people don't really get serious about it until they're literally on the doorstep of having to make a college decision. So it's, just before the beginning of the senior year or heck in the senior year, and you're like, okay, let's get these applications done. Let's get all the essays done and write the essays. And people find themselves in a situation where it's like either they put it off or just simply couldn't do it. The
Mhm.
resources weren't there to save much. For you guys, with what you do, how do you help families that get to the senior year of high school and not much has been put away? What sorts of things can you help them with if they're in that group that hey, it's go time?
Right, right. I use that, which I've used forever in my career, that ugly word budget, and a lot of people cringe, like, "So wrong." But we talk to them about, your budget, and in your question, say hey, we had to think for whatever reason. There's different things to talk through in here. One, is there any way through cash flow? And sometimes just talking to people about that helped realize, can you start, pulling money aside and earmarking it through cash flow? The other thing I bring up, and a lot of people kind of scratch their heads and say, I didn't think of that, is think, what are you spending on your child right now? People say, well, 200 for soccer and 300 for violin. And I'm like, there's $500 right there every month that you will be able to earmark when your child's in college. This isn't that one is more ongoing, that's a
Sure.
more cash flow, right? But people don't necessarily think of that. You can also bring in, people don't love it, but is there any way, you change your lifestyle a little, you might have to sacrifice. That's another thing.
Right.
Also, is there any outside help? Is grandma talking about helping, or your old college buddy who's wealthy who never had kids? We bring in all of those different buckets. And then also, while your child's in school, do you expect your child to have skin in the game, either working during college or summers? And we take
Right.
all of that and bring it all together. That doesn't mean for the typical family, it's like, oh, great, we're good. We got enough to pay for a $70,000 school now per year, that kind of thing. But we bring all of that together. And then we also talk about, if you have home equity, that's something for some families, depending on the interest. Back when interest rates were low, I had people doing cash out refis, and they were lowering their interest rate, pulling a chunk of money, and their mortgage payment was lower even. Right now we have a little bit different interest rate environment. So there's
Sure.
there's strategies around that as well. And then there's also, if money is really tight, it might be 2 years at a community college and then think about transferring. There's a lot of really good schools that love strong transfer students because they've proven themselves that they
Right.
can do college work. So,
that's another option as well.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Oh man, terrific information. Now I'm going to get a little lighthearted with you. You mentioned going through the process in addition to from a professional angle and having twins and getting them through this process. So when you think back through the years, what's perhaps your favorite vacation or your favorite memory of the twins? Did they ever go to school and pull that switcheroo thing and go to different classes, or what's your favorite story about the twins?
They didn't pull a switcheroo because of the boy girl.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, so we couldn't pull a switcheroo. I'm trying to think. What's my favorite? You mean story like around pool sort of stuff?
Yeah,
Or
or
just
you're sitting there at Thanksgiving dinner or something like that, and it always gives you a chuckle.
Yeah, what I thought was really, just really funny. They're very close, very, very
Okay.
close siblings, but they were adamant about not going to the same college. I think they thought it was going to be like high school, that they'd like run into each other. But being mom, I just kept my mouth shut. But whatever you want, and they applied to some of the same schools and got in, and they ended up at different schools, totally different kind of people, and they belonged at different schools.
Gotcha.
But I thought it was really funny. This is more, my bad and my husband's bad because they both went to state schools. My daughter went to James Madison University of Virginia, and my son
Sure.
went to Indiana University. And so we said all the kids are in the same boat. Nobody has any friends, and we drop them off. I get these phone calls, Mom, all these kids have friends because they were state schools, and so they wind us all with their friends. And of course, all the kids are nervous. So what do?
Sure.
They say even if it wasn't their favorite kid in high school, it's safety, right? So we
Right.
kind of had to say, "Oh, I'm sorry about that. Not the best parental advice." But it was just
Gotcha.
interesting watching them navigate. My son actually called us like 3 weeks in and said, could you not come to freshman parents weekend? Because I'm really, making friends and there's a big concert. And, I have to say, part of me was relieved because we had spent so much money on plane tickets. I was like, oh,
Gotcha.
God. So
Been
I
there,
don't
done
know,
that.
best story ever, but off the top of my head,
Okay, cool
yeah.
beans. No, no. I mean, I think for those that have been through this process with students, echoes of that sound very familiar. Our younger daughter did that to my wife and I not more than a month ago. So we're right there with you. So,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, Beck, really enjoyed being with you today. This has been great information. But before I let you go, a couple things. One, is there, one parting thought that you'd like to leave with our audience? And in addition, share with our audience how they can get in touch with you if they recognize themselves in any of these situations that we discussed today.
Yeah, my main piece of advice, really, professional to parent, but also just really parent to parent, is start the process wherever you are. If you have a junior, sophomore, wherever you are, start getting in. You're here and you learned something today. Keep the ball rolling. I know we're all so busy. You don't want to say, "Oh, that was a great conversation with Peg and Lee," and just put it over on the pile. And like we said earlier, all of a sudden it's senior year and it's rearing its ugly head. If you need help in the process, it's worth paying a professional to get the help. If you're a DIYer, leverage what's out there and do your DIY thing. But don't drop it, because all the colleges are on sale. It's just a matter of how they discount, and it's to find a good academic, personal, and financial fit school for your child. You'll sleep better at night with all three, especially the financial. And it's possible. All of the stress around this process, a lot of it really isn't necessary. And the biggest reason to get your arms around this is because then you can sit down with your child and you can say, "Look, and this is what I did. He's got money here and money here. We're willing to spend this amount." I didn't have to tell him my income or anything that you might not want to share with your kids. I get that. But you can set expectations. And so, first of
Exactly.
all, you're modeling prudent financial decision making, which is worth billions of dollars for your kids
Absolutely.
down the road. But also, you're relieving some of that stress that I see second semester, senior year all the time. Like, my son got into two schools. They flew my kids. I live outside of Seattle, to Pennsylvania, to a school. They had a fun weekend. Of course, my son wanted to go there. It was between there and Indiana University. He wanted to go there. That's why the school's seen these fly-ins, right? And I said
Right.
to him, we had our discussion. The school's $17,000 more over 4 years, and that's a key way to look at it because it's a 4-year investment. So you like Indiana as much as this school, so then this one isn't affordable. And he just said, "Okay." Went off to IU, no stress, but without having that conversation like a year plus before that, that could have been a really different conversation. And I'm here to tell you, and Lee, you'll probably agree, you're going to be waving goodbye at that dorm before you know it. And I always
Absolutely.
get a little choked up. Even I remember those days, like Barry asking, "You want to enjoy your time." They're teenagers, so there's always going to be challenges, but you don't have
Right.
to add to it by creating more stress around this. So that's the biggest win
Good.
from
Good.
doing that. You can sit down and really sit down with your child and have that conversation.
Okay, cool. Great. 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 Now, and how can our viewers get in touch with you?
Yeah, so in that vein, to kind of get the ball rolling, the key, we didn't get in the weeds, but I mentioned this student aid index, which is why you submit financial aid forms, if FAFSA being one of them. I strongly recommend that you go to our website. It's collegeaidpro.com, and we have software, and we have a free version of the software. You can plug in 3 of your top colleges. You'll be told when you onboard yourself, which takes about 4 minutes, 5 minutes. There's 2 student aid indexes. You'll be told that, so it's starting to help you see what kind of family are we, where can we get discounts.
There's discounts in the form of merit that have nothing to do with your finances. It starts to get the ball rolling. So I really recommend you do that. Start to get an understanding of your family. Plus, once you set up that account, you'll be on our email list. We do lots of free webinars that are very informative that will help you to continue on the process. So yeah, collegeaidpro.com, and the link to set up your free account is just mycap, mycap.collegeaidpro.com. So, but if you go to our website, you'll find it as well. So I strongly recommend you do that.
That'll get you on your college planning journey.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for that, Peg. We really appreciate it. So, again, everybody, please thank Peg Keough, Director of Education for College Aid Pro, for being with us here today. I hope this segment has been very informative to you, and I look forward to seeing you next time.